Wars don't usually start with a declaration. They start with a moment, a miscalculation, a line crossed by someone who didn't think the other side would actually respond. We've been here before, and every single time, the world said the same thing. It won't spread. It won't escalate. It will stay contained. They were wrong then. And this time, the stakes are higher than they have ever been. Here's what nobody wants to say out loud. The conflict between Israel and Iran is no longer just a regional problem. It stopped being regional the moment it involved oil markets, nuclear timelines, great power rivalries, and alliance systems that stretch from the Persian Gulf all the way to the Pacific. What happens next in the Middle East doesn't stay in the Middle East. It hasn't for decades. But right now, in this specific moment, the connections run deeper and the triggers are more sensitive than at any point in living memory. And there is one question sitting at the center of all of it that no one can honestly answer. How close are we to something that can't be walked back? Let's start with what we know. Israel struck Iran, not through a proxy, not through a cyber operation. Direct strikes on Iranian soil targeting military infrastructure, air defense systems, and facilities connected to Iran's nuclear program. Iran responded. Israel responded again. The exchange didn't stop at one round. The escalation ladder, which both sides had carefully avoided climbing for 4 decades, is now being climbed. Each rung looks manageable. Each rung feels like the last one. That's exactly how these things work before they don't. But here's where it gets strange. The nations that have the most to lose from a full regional war are not the ones doing the most to stop it. The diplomatic channels that should be roaring with emergency communication are oddly quiet. The usual framework of back-channel negotiation, the kind that diffused crises in 1973, in 2006, in 2019, seems slower this time. Less urgent. Almost as if certain powers have decided that a degree of escalation serves their interests. That is a deeply unsettling possibility. And it raises a question that serious analysts are beginning to ask in private. Is anyone actually trying to stop this? To understand where this could go, you need to understand the web of commitments, alliances, and dependencies that surround this conflict like tripwires. Because this isn't just Israel versus Iran. It never was. Iran is not alone. It has what some have called an axis of resistance. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Houthi forces in Yemen, armed militias across Iraq and Syria. These are not independent actors. They are extensions of Iranian strategic reach, armed with Iranian weapons, funded by Iranian money, and in some cases directed by Iranian commanders. When Israel strikes Iran, it isn't just striking a nation-state. It is striking a network that exists in 6 countries simultaneously. That network can respond in 6 directions at once. Some of those directions point at American military assets. Some point at critical infrastructure. Some point at shipping lanes that supply Europe and Asia with energy. And this changes everything. Because the moment American soldiers are killed by Iranian-linked forces in a direct response to this conflict, the political equation in Washington changes overnight. The United States has mutual defense frameworks, basing agreements, and security commitments across the region. It has aircraft carrier groups positioned in the waters nearby. It has thousands of troops in Iraq, Syria, Jordan, and the Gulf. These aren't abstract commitments. They are physical presence. And physical presence means physical exposure. The line between supporting an ally and being drawn into a war is thinner than most people realize. And it gets thinner every time another exchange happens.
All units, be advised.
Now look at the
Hostile
other
movement
side
near
of the
outer
board.
perimeter. Stay
Russia
alert.
has been watching this unfold with the kind of focused attention that should concern
Check the
everyone.
signature on the third stream.
Russia and Iran have deepened their relationship dramatically over the past several years. Military cooperation, drone technology transfers, energy deals, shared interest in undermining American influence in the Middle East and beyond. A seriously damaged Iran is not in Russia's interest. A destabilized oil market, however, might be, at least in the short term. Higher oil prices mean more revenue for Moscow at exactly the moment it needs it most. Some analysts believe Russia has a strategic incentive not to de-escalate this crisis too quickly. That is not a comfortable thought. China is calculating quietly. Iran sits at the heart of China's Belt and Road ambitions in the Middle East. Beijing has invested billions in Iranian energy infrastructure and counts on Iranian oil for a significant portion of its supply. A regional war threatens those investments, disrupts those supply chains, and forces China into a public position it has carefully avoided taking. But China also understands that American attention and American military resources pulled toward the Middle East are resources not focused on the Pacific. It's possible that Beijing sees this moment not as a crisis to solve, but as a strategic variable to manage. That raises questions about how hard China will push for de-escalation and how much it actually wants one. Then there is the oil. Always the oil. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. Through it flows roughly 20% of the world's daily oil supply. Every serious escalation scenario in the Persian Gulf eventually arrives at the same choke point. If Iran decides to respond to these strikes not with missiles, but with naval disruption, mines, fast attack boats, threats against tanker traffic, the global economy doesn't just feel it. It seizes. Oil prices don't spike by 20%. They spike by 80%. Supply chains that survived COVID, survived the Red Sea disruptions, survived every previous crisis, face something qualitatively different. The nations most exposed aren't the ones making the decisions. They're the ones in Asia, in Africa, in South America, who will pay the price for a war they had no part in starting. Here's the twist that most people aren't considering. The greatest danger right now may not be the deliberate choices of any government. It may be the accident that nobody planned for. The history of wars that nobody wanted is long and well documented. World War I did not begin because every leader involved sat down and chose global conflict. It began because a system of alliances, commitments, and automatic responses created a structure where a single assassination in Sarajevo could, within 6 weeks, mobilize the armies of every major European power simultaneously. The structure did the work. The individuals were almost irrelevant. The Middle East right now has a similar structure. Alliances that trigger other alliances, commitments that require responses, proxy forces that can act faster than diplomats can talk, and communication channels between adversaries that are less reliable, less trusted, and less functional than they were 20 years ago. It's possible that the most dangerous scenario isn't the one anyone is planning. It's the one that happens between the plans. Now consider 3 ways to read where this is going. The first reading is managed containment. Both Israel and Iran understand the cost of full escalation. Both have rational actors at the top of their command structures who recognize that a regional war destroys more than it delivers for either side. The strikes were a message. The responses were a message. And eventually, through back-channel communication that never appears in public, a new ceiling gets established, a new equilibrium, damaged, unstable, but functional. This is the reading that most Western governments are publicly committed to, even if they won't say it explicitly. The second reading is slow escalation. Neither side fully backs down. Each exchange is slightly larger than the last, each response slightly more aggressive. The proxies stay active. The oil pressure stays elevated. The diplomatic space narrows gradually. Other actors, Russia, Hezbollah, Houthi forces, add pressure at the edges, and the world wakes up one morning to find that it has been in a regional war for 3 months without ever making a single decision to be in one. This is the reading that history suggests is more common than anyone likes to admit. The third reading is the one people don't want to say, that the current structure is not designed to de-escalate, that too many powerful actors have calculated that a controlled level of conflict serves their strategic interests better than peace, that the systems which once moderated these crises, international institutions, trusted intermediaries, shared economic incentives, have been weakened to the point where they can no longer do the job, and that what looks like an Israel-Iran conflict is actually the visible surface of a much deeper fracture in the global order, a fracture between the world that existed after 1991 and the world that is trying to replace it. That fracture doesn't heal with a ceasefire. It requires a new architecture, and no one has built it yet. Here is where we are. The Middle East is in the most unstable configuration it has been in for a generation. The old rules are broken. The new rules haven't been written. The actors with the most power to de-escalate have mixed incentives for doing so. And the actors with the least power, ordinary people in Lebanon, in Iran, in Israel, in Yemen, in the Gulf states, and far beyond, have no say in what happens next at all.
So here is the question that should be keeping every serious analyst, every diplomat, and every world leader awake right now. If this escalates, and not everyone believes it will, but not everyone believes it won't, who actually stops it? What mechanism exists? What institution has the credibility, the leverage, and the will to pull these forces back from the edge? Because the last time the world faced a crisis of this structural complexity, the answer to that question determined everything. And right now, that answer is not obvious.